Welcome to the Singer's Guide podcast with me, Tessa. This is the show for ambitious singers who want more than just scales and song practice. We'll talk about the things regular singing lessons don't always have time to cover. Because being a singer is about more than just your voice. It's about confidence, preparation, and all the little skills that make performing effortless. I'm excited to be your guide and your fellow traveller as we explore them all. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Singer's Guide podcast. My name is Tessa and I am your host. I decided a little while back that my first season of podcast would have 12 episodes. So this is the penultimate one. And if I'm honest, it's one that I've been a little bit worried about recording. Also, I've been quite busy the past couple of weeks, and so it's been a little bit tricky to get this recording into my schedule. But that kind of relates to the topic of today, because what I wanted to talk about today is what it takes to be a singer. And that is a pretty huge topic. And so I'm slightly concerned. I want to make all of these episodes less than 20 minutes, so I'm going to try my very best. But my aim is I would like to talk through all of the things that I believe are necessary to have a career as a singer. And some of this is coming from the research that I did when I was doing my master's, where I looked at assessment within higher education. So I spoke to university singing teachers and I talked to them about what they thought was important for a career, but also what their courses were asking singers to do and what they were being assessed on, because that will give us a good indication of the things that singers need. But it's also naturally going to incorporate my knowledge, my experience of being a singer and a singing teacher, and all of the skills that I have needed and continue to need within my career. And when I said that I'd been a bit busy this week and I was struggling to fit this recording in, it gives a perfect example of what it's like to have a freelance career that is made up of lots of little jobs. And so I can talk from experience about what it's like to be in this industry. So maybe I should talk about myself a little bit first. I mean, I've been talking to you for 10, now 11 episodes, but maybe I've not really introduced myself very well. Well done, Tessa. I would say that my main roles are probably maybe 3 separate areas. So I am a singer, predominantly a jazz singer. I run a swing band and I am in a 1940s close harmony trio. So that's like one sort of strand of my work. I'm also a singing teacher or a vocal coach. Those 2 roles are slightly different, but I do tend to sort of combine both. And I do that within a couple of universities, and I also do that privately. And I have my membership, which I've mentioned before, the Singers Practice Hub, and I also have a one-to-one program to help artists to develop their singing and their careers, and that is called Self-Validated Voice. And I incorporate all of that into the role when I'm thinking about being a singing teacher, vocal coach. I also kind of consider content making and this podcast and the creation of products and services that help people as part of that role, which I know not everybody does, but that's how I view it. And then the final strand to my career is choir leading. So I have run choirs for a very long time. And so with that, I lead choirs and arrange for choirs. And that is, as I said, the third side to this triangle of my career. So for me, a typical week might be 2 or 3 days teaching within universities, and then a choir one evening, a gig or 2, and some arranging work, a handful of private students, and then on top of that, content creation or documenting the things that I'm doing in order to put those on social media, in order to find more people to help and to bring in clients to my business. And then on top of those things that are kind of typical week by week, we might also have other things. So back in October, I recorded an album. And so at the moment, I am making sure that the process of mixing and mastering that is happening. And I'm also preparing for a gig that I'm putting on with that band to launch that album. So that's not typical. It doesn't happen all the time. But at the moment, that is what's happening. And I've said this on my social media before, but I think that a lot of the skills that you need to be a singer are things like project management, organization, and communication with people. And I will go a little bit more into detail in that. But what I'm first going to do is talk through what I think of as the kind of three main areas of knowledge and skill that we need to have a career as a singer. And I've split them into three kind of personas, if you like. So we've got the artist, we've got the learner, and we've got the professional. Because unfortunately, as much as one might think that the only skills you need to be a singer is to have a good voice, that is definitely not the case. So let's start with the artist. And this one is the one that seems, I guess, the most obvious. You will require vocal skills, musical and performance skills. And obviously what that means is quite dependent on the individual singer, your style, the genre that you sing, your goals. But regardless, within this artist persona, we've got vocal technique, musicianship, and performance technique. So with vocal technique, we're talking about the command of your instrument. Can you navigate registers in the way that you want to? Can you demonstrate different vocal qualities as are needed by the style and the genre that you are performing? Good intonation and agility and articulation and range, all of these things, the things that you are most likely to cover in singing lessons, especially if you're working with a singing teacher who is more of a technician. Then we've also got musicianship. I would say that this incorporates the practical elements of musicianship. So improvisation, being able to sing with rhythm and different feels, and songwriting as well. So your ability to write lyrics and music. Again, it's not going to be necessary for everybody, but for some artists, writing songs is a really important part of what they want to do. Now, I think that singing is all about connection. We talk about connecting to yourself, connecting to the song, and connecting to the audience. And performance technique is the stuff that helps you towards that ultimate goal of connection, storytelling, expressing emotion, being confident, hosting the space. And so vocal technique, musicianship, and performance technique, I would place into that's the artist. They are the skills that would benefit a singer in that artistic section. But as I've mentioned, it's not just the artist. In order to have a career that is within this sphere, there are other things too. So let's talk about the learner. Because I think to be a singer is also to never stop learning. There is a lot to learn, and the nature of any sort of creative art is that there isn't an end point. You don't get to a moment where you're like, hooray, I've completed singing. So as much as maybe we might wish that that was true. And so within this role, the learner persona, we look at knowledge of external elements and also of reflective practices so that we can learn more about ourselves. I would say that there's two sort of subsections in this persona. There's the knowledge, and that knowledge is voice science, vocal health, musical style, music theory, practice theory, and technical elements, things like how to record, how to use sound equipment. And then there's also reflective skills. These are the skills that you need to be able to look at any given thing that's happened, moment, tendency of yourself, and be able to determine how to learn from those experiences. If you were kind of academically inclined, you might want to go and find a reflective practice model that you can use. There's plenty of those on the internet. Or it can be things that are developed just through journaling, just through observing yourself and really thinking critically about what you're seeing and the ways that you want to develop. The third persona that I want to present is the professional. And I think that even though having a career as a singer can look like a lot of different things, and while there are skills that are more or less relevant depending on you as an individual and the jobs that you want to be going into, there are certain skills that are beneficial across the board. And we can talk about these in terms of hard skills and soft skills. You may have heard that expression before. So hard skills are the practical industry skills that you might need beyond the singing and performance technique and the musicianship. It's related to the knowledge that's within the learner, but it's the practical side rather than the theoretical. So things like how to set up a PA, using a DAW to record your music, how to navigate the distribution, the marketing, the promotion of your music, or even just yourself as an artist. So things like video editing, creating content. These are all things that I would consider hard skills. Not difficult, just hard as in the opposite of soft. I'd like to think that none of it is too difficult, and there's definitely ways to practice it and improve it. Soft skills, which are sometimes known as people skills, are really vital in a career that involves music making. Soft skills also include organization, communication, collaboration, motivation, and I think that this is quite possibly the most important part of all of it. As I said before, oftentimes being a singer, being a musician, a freelancer of any sort is project management. And you can have a lot of balls in the air that you are just desperately trying not to drop. And you need to be self-motivated. You need to be able to prioritize and know which things need your attention first, and also be organized and good at communication so that you can make sure that everything you need to do within your week on your to-do list, that you are getting to them in the right time and not letting anybody down. I would also say that within this soft skills, having a good mindset and a real sense of belief in your abilities is hugely beneficial, because to be an artist, to be a singer, involves quite a lot of internal work, mindset work, and belief. Having a mindset that allows you to stay positive, recognize the areas that you want to improve, and believe that you can continually improve them is going to be hugely beneficial. And just as an aside, these soft skills that we're talking about, so organization, communication, having a good mindset, these are all elements that are really helpful in other careers too. So not just being a musician or being a singer. They're really good life skills to have. So developing them is a win-win, whether or not you do go on into a professional career as a singer or not. And because I love to talk about practice, I would say that every single one of these things that I've talked about, so within the artist, vocal technique, musicianship, performance technique, within the learner, knowledge of certain areas of musicianship or vocal health, etc., and reflective skills, and within the professional, the hard skills, the practical skills that will help you as a musician, and the soft skills that will help you to communicate and grow. These are all things that can be practiced. So when you think, oh, I should be practicing my singing, absolutely, that is one part of it. That's the vocal technique part. But we can also be practicing our communication. We can be practicing our organization. We can be practicing using a DAW to record and setting up the microphone, or arranging parts and writing harmonies for choirs or vocal groups. These are all things that definitely count towards practice when you consider the bigger picture of the skills that you need to be a singer, not just having a good voice. I did it. Did I do it? I think I've done it. I've kept it within 20 minutes. I probably could have gone into more detail there, but that's a kind of overview of the things that I think are beneficial for a singer to know if they would like a career as a singer or a career in music. And as I mentioned at the beginning, I consider myself to be a singer, so all of those things are important for me to be developing and practicing. I also consider myself a choir leader and a band leader. Some of those are absolutely transferable. There's a lot of crossover. I need to be able to arrange harmonies. I need to have the practical skills to be able to record parts that I have written. And I need the organizational skills and the communication skills to be able to organize lots of people. And, as a singing teacher, I also need a lot of those skills too. And in addition, maybe I also need some more teacher-specific skills. But a lot of that is also to do with communication and connection, which are things that are covered in what I've just talked about. And so if you're sitting there thinking, wow, that's a lot of stuff, yes, it is, but you don't need to know it all straight away. As I said, you can practice these things. And that's what experience does, is that, the more that you do these things, the more that you go out and gig as a singer, the better that you're going to get at communicating with an audience, or setting up your PA, or asking venues for the right information so that you bring the right equipment that you need. You don't need to know it all now. But what I think you do need to know, and something that maybe I wish I had known, is that all of these things are important. It's good to know that they exist, even if you don't yet have all of those skills. It's good to know that you will eventually need them. And that brings me on to the question, the final time I'm going to ask this question before I talk about some of the answers in episode 12 next time, which is, what do you wish that you had learned sooner? I mean, I've literally just given you a whole podcast episode of things that could be your answer. Do you wish that you had learned how to record sooner than you had? Do you wish that you'd known how to set up a PA before it came to your first gig and you had absolutely no idea what you were doing? Was it microphone technique? Do you wish that you'd learned how to use a mic sooner? Or the importance of communication and organization. I feel like being organized, that's something that comes as a shock maybe to some creative minds. I certainly struggle with it, she says, ignoring her tax return for another day. Maybe you wish you'd been taught how to keep your accounting books much neater throughout the year so that when you got to January it wasn't a huge mess. I don't know, that just came out of nowhere, not related to anything. And with that, I am going to say goodbye. Thank you so much for listening to the Singer's Guide podcast. My name is Tessa. Please do get in touch. Follow me on socials. Leave me a fancy 5-star review. That apparently goes a long way. I'm just learning about podcasting. I will see you next time. Goodbye and happy singing. Thanks for tuning in to the Singer's Guide podcast. You'll find all the resources and links from this episode in the show notes. If you found this episode helpful, please subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share it with a fellow singer who'd love it too. And don't forget to connect with me on socials at Tessa Smith Music. Keep singing, keep practicing, and I'll see you next time.